Welcome back, everybody. Today's video, this is going to be a very interesting one, and I probably won't even touch a transmission part, but hear me out. Today's video basically is going to be about the mental side of building transmissions. And what I mean by that is what you personally bring to the table when you're attempting to build a transmission successfully. And this is for all the do-it-yourselfers out there and possibly builders alike, because through all these years I've learned so many invaluable lessons, and I'm going to talk about a bunch of them today in approaching building a transmission. Because I notice on my channel some of the comments you guys are leaving, I can tell the apprehensiveness, if that's a word, of building your own transmission. And today is going to kind of ease that pain a little bit and just ease your mind in the fact that you actually can do this if you approach it properly. But it's very important to do that, and that's all we're going to talk about today. And I got some cool lessons that I've learned that I'm fully willing to share with you guys, and let me know what you think at the end of the video. Comments are always welcome. They're driving these videos, so stick around. Let's just get to it, and let's talk about the mental side of building transmissions. Okay, to start with, just talk about when I started building transmissions. It was probably 1991, so it's been 31 years or whatever, but I started at a transmission shop, not knowing a whole lot about transmissions, just here and there, modulators, vacuum, whatever. But I R&R'd for about 6 months, and they could tell I was a serious mechanic as far as wanting to learn and wanting to grow and move on. But they gave me a shot after 6 months and basically threw me at a building bench, and it was sink or swim for me. Which, looking back, that was the best thing that could have happened, because on the job training, and if you don't get it right, you're out the door kind of thing, and you just got to make sure it's right. But I was kind of a perfectionist, if you will, back in the early days, because I just thought if I didn't get it perfect, that it wasn't going to work right. And I've since learned that it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be right. And at this point, the way I look at it is there is no perfection. You're not going to get it perfect every time. It just doesn't happen. In life, transmissions included, it is what it is. But the lesson to learn there is it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be right. And that took me a few years to figure that out. And for those first 3 years, my knees were shaking at the building bench, like clack, clack, clack. It was crazy. But I was determined to figure out transmissions and become the best builder I could. So lesson number one that I learned is it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be right. And that took me a few years to figure that one out. Another thing is, bottom line is, if you're an actual mechanic and that you do mechanic work for a living, but you've never built a transmission before, you absolutely can build your own transmission. It's just a matter of getting the right information to where you understand it. And these videos I'm trying to do here is I'm literally trying to give you all the information you need to get your E4OD 4R100 right the first time, put it back in the truck, and it goes down the road and you're satisfied with it. But bottom line is, if you're an actual mechanic, you absolutely can do this with these. I don't know how many videos this is going to end up being, but if you watch these videos, your transmission totally should work properly. With that said, all you do-it-yourselfers out there, you absolutely can do this too. You just have to add another level of what you're willing to put into pulling your transmission out, rebuilding it, putting it back in, because there's a commitment piece that some of you guys that have never been a mechanic, but you're serious do-it-yourselfer, maybe not have come across in the agony of coming across a job where it's taken hours or days to fix. And the commitment piece of building transmissions, you got to be committed once you start, before you even take out the first bolt, that it may not go right. You put it back in, and the transmission actually may have to come back out of the car to get it right. So don't fool yourself, I guess, as far as what it might take, because I'm the type of person, from start to finish, I'll do whatever it takes to get it right and have it go down the road. The last thing you want to do as a do-it-yourselfer is pull your transmission out, attempt to rebuild it, put it back in, and end up having to take it to a transmission shop, because that's the last thing a transmission shop wants to hear is, I tried to do it myself. So with these videos, I'm trying to give you the confidence and the knowledge and the ability to get through your actual own transmission. There's no reason you guys can't do it either, none whatsoever. It just takes a little bit more effort, and knowing the fact that you may have problems and you just got to work through it. So commitment is huge in building transmissions. So that would be another lesson that I've learned over the years of what it takes to actually get it right the first time, every time. Another thing is, if you notice, I'm speaking from a confident mindset, not a cocky mindset. And that is one of the absolute biggest things I've ever learned building transmissions, is you have to be confident, which is what I'm trying to project here in this video today, to teach you guys as far as your apprehensiveness about building transmissions. But you got to be confident, but overconfidence will kill your transmission rebuild. And spending the time to get it right on the bench is absolutely essential. I'll spend 3 hours more on a transmission getting it right on the bench, other than getting it done, putting it back in the car, and it doesn't work. Because when it's in the car, you can't see what's going on. This is the only time you can see what is going on inside your transmission. But learning that lesson, I mean, if you notice, I have no ass. I got no ass at all. It's not there, because my butt has been kicked around the block so many times by so many transmissions, and I learned to get it right on the bench. No matter what it takes, no matter how many hours it takes, get it right on the bench. Don't worry about getting it right after it's not right in the car and having to pull it back out. And literally, probably 100 transmissions, maybe 200, literally ball dragged me around the block. And that's where I learned to be humble about transmission building. Cockiness has no place in transmission building. It's, I guess the best way to look at it is put your dick back in your pants and leave your ego at the door when you go to rebuild a transmission, and use as much mental energy, positive mental energy, in building the transmission, and leave the man shit out of it, because they will bite you. They'll bite you hard. And I've had that happen so many times over the years that I've learned to just come into any rebuild, and that's this rebuild too, because you never know which one's going to bite you in the ass. So every transmission I build, I approach it with humbleness, and I make sure I put all my mental and emotional energy into the transmission rebuild, and not wandering my mind and thinking I'm this big transmission builder or anything like that. And that has served me insanely well over the years. It took me about 10 years to figure that one out. And it seemed like every 100 transmissions I get that one ass kicker, and then every 500 or so I'd get the ball drag around the block. And those are the brutal times that you go through. But it is what it is. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about that. I want you to not worry about that. Just spend as much mental energy, putting into your transmission, not into anything else ego-wise as far as that goes. So that was one of the best lessons I ever learned, but it took me years and years and many ass kickings, ball drags around the block to learn that lesson. But it's absolutely essential. Okay, another thing is, and I learned this about 10 years into building, but that apprehensiveness that you feel, or the uneasy feeling you get in trying to rebuild a transmission, you've never done it before, that's actually a good thing to a degree. And like I say, I was about 10 years into building, and we went through a bunch of builders at our shop, but this one guy in particular, his name was Ray. He was a really good builder. The only problem was he tried to go too fast, and it is what it is. But he was really good with Honda transmissions, and he just wanted to build Hondas. That's all he wanted to do. But probably 4 months working with him, he came over to my building bench one day, and he said, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" And I said, "Absolutely. I just want to learn anything I can." And he said, "That uneasy feeling you have, that apprehensiveness, don't lose that. No matter how good a builder you become, never lose that feeling when you're building the transmission." And it took me a week or two to figure that out, but when it clicked, it clicked. And every transmission I've built since has been that way when I approach them. Because if you get overconfident, that's when the problems start. And I noticed that in my building. I'd get through 98 transmissions, I'd be on top of the world, and then bam, slam to the ground by that 99th transmission. And then I learned every transmission I build, you gotta have a little bit of that uneasy feeling going on just to keep your attention focused. And that has served me crazy well over my building career, I guess you call it. But bottom line is, it's not a bad thing to have that apprehensiveness going on. It just can't take over what you're actually putting into the transmission. And that was one of the best lessons I've ever learned about building transmissions. Another cool lesson I learned, information is key. Without a scanner and proper manuals, I guess, it's almost like trying to rebuild your transmission blind. So Rod Huffy was telling me he has an ATRA book, ATSG book on the E4OD 40100, and you have to get that book if you're going to rebuild your own trans, because you want that stuff right at hand as you're rebuilding it. And if you don't have it, you're basically going blind. And I use as much information as I can get my hands on when I'm rebuilding a transmission, just for that reason, because I don't like building blind. If I need the right information at the right time, it's there. And this is actually a really good book. This is just on a 700. I studied this book front to back when I was doing hot rodding 700s. But you have to have the information you need and a scanner. Don't try to rebuild your transmission without a scanner. It's basically impossible. So another lesson, huge lesson, is get as much information, whether it be book or on computer, period, because you have to have it. It's basically just a wrench in your toolbox, if that makes sense. So information is key. Just a quick story on one of the ball drags that I've had. I was probably 5 or 6 years in, starting to build my true confidence in building, and had a Ford AXOD, Ford Taurus come in the shop, front wheel drive. I'd probably built 30 or 40 of them, and had this particular one come in, and I think it was all blowed up, and I had to go through the valve body, take all the valves out, and rebuilt it, put it back in the car, and the 1-2 shift was just super slippy, slide, bump, and bam, into gear. It's like, what the hell's going on here? I've built 30 of them and never had any problem like this. But went through all the diagnostics, couldn't figure out what was going on, wasn't sure where to go, and ended up pulling it back out of the car. I tore the transmission completely apart and didn't find anything. Everything air checked. I thought everything's fine. What the hell's going on here? Put it back together, same thing. So that transmission, I've worked with hydraulic diagrams a little bit kind of thing, not a good bit, but I learned the lesson of trying to read these crazy diagrams. They're basically electrical diagrams on steroids, but when you have a transmission problem, they're essential to use. And I mean, I still get mesmerized when I have a transmission problem. You spend an hour or two staring at one of these and you're just loopy, but it's kind of what it takes. But transmission back out, in, didn't work. Had the valve body out of it, I think, twice. And the third time is when I learned to just sit down and work the problem as opposed to just pulling your hair out and being all over the place. But what ended up fixing it was there is a valve like this. It's kind of like that, and I had this valve in backwards. I believe it's called the 1-2 transition valve in the second gear circuit. And I had that valve in backwards, and I followed that oil circuit all the way through the second gear, and I ended up finding that thing was backwards, and put it in right, put the valve body back in the car, worked perfect. But that was one of those ball draggers that, I mean, they'll wear you out if you're not careful. And I remember probably the second time I had that valve body out, I was coming back off a road test, and I was so mad, so angry. I beat the shit out of that dude's dash. I was like ready to quit building. I was so frustrated. But that taught me to just settle down, because once you get crazy emotional about it, that's when things go south and you get nowhere. So just got to work the problem. But fixed it. Everything was fine. Car went down the road, no complaints. Everything was perfect with it. But I learned, when that car left the shop, his dash never was right after that, but his transmission was. And that was just one of those lessons I learned. You just got to settle down and work the problem. Okay, I'm going to end this video now, and doing it for a reason, but we're probably 20 minutes in now, and I'm curious whether this video actually helped you guys or hindered your progress on building your transmission. But to me, it's just as important as putting any two transmission parts together. You got to put it together in your mind also. And I gave a lot of my best tips today in what I've learned. I could do a part 2. There could be probably a part 20 to this video if you want me to go there, but it is what it is. Just think about it. Think about what I was talking about and whether it helps you or hinders you. And I definitely could do a part 2 to this video in talking about the mental side of what you bring to the table. So let me know. Let me know in your comments. I'm happy to hear them, good or bad. That's fine. I've been getting a little flack out there for this, that, and the other, but it is what it is. I really don't care. I just want to tell you about how I've approached transmissions through my whole building career or whatever. And I hope this video helped. I think it will. And we're just going to go from there. We're working on this E4OD. Rick, you've been gracious enough to be patient enough to let me take the time to do this stuff. So it's all good, and it's all relative in building a proper transmission. So good to talk to you guys out there. And next video, we're gonna get back to the building, but I just felt it was very necessary to do this video for people out there that have never built a transmission or maybe did a valve body or something like that, just to just to get the true feel of building a transmission. So take care. We'll talk to you soon. I'm going on vacation. I'll be back in a week, and we'll talk to you in a week, and we're gonna keep going with this rebuild. I know some of you guys out there are anxious to just get this thing built, and I am too, trust me. But these videos are super important as far as getting it right, and that's all that matters. So we'll talk to you soon. Take care.